Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to slice through that mountain of information, and pull out those essential nuggets you really need. Today, we're diving into, a really tumultuous and fascinating period of Chinese history. We're talking the twilight of the Eastern Han Dynasty and the chaotic dawn of the Three Kingdoms.
Yeah, and we've pulled together a pretty rich array of sources for this. We've got detailed historical accounts, vivid descriptions of the key players, their world. Our mission really is to understand not just what happened, but why. Why did this huge empire just fracture so violently? And who are the critical figures? What can we actually learn about power, ambition, survival? It's a story packed with twists, profound implications too.
Absolutely. We're going to unpack the events that really led to centuries of conflict. We'll trace everything from the surprising spiritual roots of peasant rebellions to the really intricate, often deadly power struggles happening right inside the imperial court. You're going to meet some ruthless warlords, brilliant strategists, even an emperor who, literally had to scrounge for his next meal.
Exactly. We'll be looking at the Yellow Turban Rebellion, the rise and fall of tyrants like Zhuo, those ill-fated alliances formed against them, and then the emergence of these legendary figures, Cao Cao, the shrewd pragmatist, Sun Jian and his ambitious son Sun Ce, Liu Bei, who was charismatic but often, unlucky, and the formidable warrior Liu Bei. Each one left a huge mark on ancient China.
Okay, so given all that simmering discontent and the court corruption we've sort of touched on, what was the real spark? What ignited the chaos? What do the historical accounts show as that first, major crack in the Han Foundation?
Well, the first major crack was definitely this widespread rebellion, but with a really surprising spiritual core, the Yellow Turban Rebellion. And what's truly fascinating here is how deeply tied it was to Taoism. Specifically, this text called the Taiping Kingling Shu, the Scripture of Great Peace. Now, officials had dismissed this book as just, witchcraft, but it spread like wildfire among regular folk. It wasn't just religious. It offered this radical alternative to a corrupt, failing system. It gave common people a powerful banner to rally under.
And leading it was Zhang. He wasn't just a preacher. He called himself the great teacher of virtue and kindness. He preached healing through confessing sins and drinking fu shui, this spiritual elixir.
Yeah, basically water mixed with paper charms and chanted spells. Sounds simple, right? But this mix of folk medicine and spiritual promise, it resonated deeply with thousands who were just desperate for hope, for a new vision.
So how did that happen? How does a religious movement turn into a formidable military force capable of challenging an empire?
Well, that's the thing. Zhang, he quietly organized this anti-government movement for over 10 years, meticulously. He sent 8 disciples across the country to prepare, divided his followers, tens of thousands of them, into 36 structured units. Some units had over 10,000 people, each with its own leader. So he transformed this spiritual calling into a, quote, highly structured armed force ready for revolution.
And that slogan, the blue heavens are dead, the yellow heavens shall rise. In the year of Jiazi, the world will be blessed. That's powerful stuff. They even painted Jiazi in white clay on government buildings, like a countdown. Imagine the psychological impact.
Exactly. And while all this was brewing in the countryside, the imperial court, it was completely embroiled in its own life-or-death power struggle. The key players were the powerful eunuch faction on one side and the imperial relatives and scholar officials on the other. This constant internal strife wasn't just squabbling, it was a systemic weakness. It basically paralyzed the central government.
You had figures like Yuan Shao from a powerful aristocratic family and the shrewd Cao Cao. They formed a political group aiming to end the eunuch's control. Yuan Shao even allied with Grand General He Jin. He was the empress's brother and deeply frustrated with the eunuch's stranglehold. But it's interesting, right? Even He Jin, with his high military rank, couldn't just assert control because the eunuchs had so much influence over the emperor.
That highlights a crucial point. Power was incredibly decentralized within the court. It was driven by competing personal loyalties, not some unified imperial vision. So He Jin and his younger brother, He Miao, general of chariots and cavalry, quite a title, they held 2 of the top 3 military spots. But even within the imperial in-laws, tensions flared. Zhang, Empress Dowager Dong's nephew, also a top general, started challenging the He family's grip. It meant the Han court was just perpetually vulnerable, like a ship with a dozen captains all pulling in different directions.
So the court was fatally distracted.
Yeah.
Vulnerable, right when this massive rebellion is erupting outside. And the eunuchs, like Zhao Zong and Zhang Rang Emperor Ling, actually called them his parents, which shows their sway.
Incredible, isn't it?
Yeah. They wielded immense power, constantly frustrating the scholar official class. The scholars had a brief win when Yuan Wei was appointed Grand Tutor, but it was, like the sources say, short-lived. The balance was always shifting, fertile ground for opportunists.
And this profound internal weakness, this power vacuum left an opening. And one man, Dong Zhuo, from the remote northwest, was perfectly poised to fill it. What's interesting about Dong Zhuo, though, is he wasn't always successful. The accounts show he was initially dismissed from a post for suffering a crushing defeat against Yellow Turban rebels.
Right, but his military career definitely wasn't over. The records show later he successfully defeated warlords Bian Zhang and Han Sui, and then the Qing and Hu tribes. These victories got him back into imperial favor, solidified his power base, especially in Liang province. He had this formidable mix of Han Chinese and nomadic troops. He really knew how to leverage military strength and, well, a reputation for ruthless effectiveness.
And Dong Zhuo's ambition just grew uncontrollably. He wasn't content being a provincial commander. He stationed his troops in Hedong, basically claiming the whole Longji region, all while carefully watching the court's internal chaos. When Emperor Ling died, bam, he saw his chance. Moved into Luoyang just as Heijin was rising to power.
And that internal conflict, it proved to be Heijin's undoing. One of the most dramatic, pivotal miscalculations, really. Jin wanted to wipe out the eunuchs, right? But he made the fatal mistake of going into the palace alone.
Just walked right in, like a deer walking right into a trap, as the source says.
And the eunuchs, led by Zhang Rang, ambushed him, killed him brutally. Shocking turn of events. Plunged the capital into utter chaos.
So the eunuchs win, but only for a moment. They found themselves trapped, desperate. Their victory was incredibly short-lived. Zhang Rang and his group, they realized it was over. They leapt into the river and ended their lives. A sudden, complete end to their powerful faction. But the chaos didn't stop. It just shifted gears, leaving this power vacuum that Dong Zhuo was all too ready to exploit.
And the young emperor Liu Bei and his brother Liu Ji, they were isolated, incredibly vulnerable. They eventually meet Dong Zhuo. Liu Bei, terrified, just stammers, can barely speak. But the 9-year-old Liu Ji, he answers calmly and clearly.
Yeah, Dong Zhuo was impressed. And he noted Liu Shi was raised by Dowager Dong, who shared his surname, maybe a small thing, but perhaps symbolic for him. So he decided right then to depose Liu Bei. It wasn't just favoritism, it was a ruthless power play. Install a more compliant puppet emperor.
Yuan Shao, still a powerful voice, openly opposed this. He famously said, "The court and the people will never accept it. You can't do this. It would make us traitors and rebels."
Dong Zhuo's response, chilling. It reveals his absolute contempt for tradition. He basically said, who decides the fate of the empire now? Me. If I want this change, who's going to stop me? A declaration of absolute personal power over any imperial decree.
So Dong Zhuo eventually forced Empress Dowager He to issue the decree, deposing Liu Bei to Prince of Hongnong, installing Liu Xi as the new emperor, Emperor Xian. And this happened amidst this terrifying atmosphere. Soldiers everywhere, weapons drawn, their blades gleaming. Liu Bei had been emperor for barely half a year. Shows how fast power could shift.
Dong Zhuo's rule was, well, notoriously brutal, corrupt. He appointed toddlers in his family as marquises, openly stating, one man gets lucky and everyone around him gets rich. This wasn't just corruption, it was deliberate. Dismantling the old Han meritocracy, replacing it with loyalty, with cronies. He even forced the renowned scholar Cai Yung to join his court, threatened to wipe out your whole family.
Wow.
Yeah. Cai Yung knew Dong Zhuo was rough, uncultured, but he had no choice. Highlights the absolute terror of his regime.
And the atrocities just kept coming. The sources paint this horrifying picture. His soldiers massacring locals at a festival in Yangcheng, beheading men, binding women, tying heads to carts. They even pile up the severed heads and set them on fire, calling it a victory.
Boasting of their spoils of war. It led to that chilling phrase, heads in front of the horse, women behind it. This wasn't just brutality, it was psychological warfare, designed to instill fear, crush any resistance.
So as opposition inevitably started building, Dong Zhuo makes this desperate but actually kind of cunning strategic move, relocating the capital from Liang to Chang'an.
Right. He claimed it was the will of heaven, but clearly it was an attempt to escape. Put distance between the puppet emperor and the growing opposition, consolidate his power in the West. And despite pushback from officials like Yang Biao, Dong Zhuo just persisted. He eventually executed dissenters like Wu Chang and Zhu Se, forced Yang Biao and He Guan to apologize, even if he supposedly felt a twinge of regret about his public image, which I doubt.
Well, His tyranny couldn't go unchallenged forever.
Yeah.
Yuan Shao and Cao Cao, disgusted, realizing the threat he posed, decided to form an alliance. Bring him down, a crucial moment, the start of a united front against this internal oppressor.
Yeah, this coalition, sometimes called the Suanzhou Alliance, it drew together strong local leaders, people like Baoshan, Qumao, and the audacious Sun Jian. Cao Cao himself raised about 5,000 troops. Yuan Shao left the capital to raise his own army in Jizhu. On paper, it looked unstoppable.
There's that interesting detail about how they created the manifesto against him, right?
Oh, yeah. Kiao Mao, governor of Dong Commandery, he forged a document, pretending it was from the Three Excellencies in the capital, addressed it to the provinces. The letter listed all of Dongzhu's crimes. It wasn't just a declaration of war. It was political propaganda, trying to legitimize their rebellion.
And Sun Jian, a key figure early on. He had that legendary origin story, strange lights over ancestral graves, his mother dreaming her intestines wrapped around a city gate.
Right. Whether true or not, these tales show how leaders in this chaotic time often relied on omens, auspicious signs, to bolster legitimacy, inspire followers, a powerful tool when traditional authority was crumbling. He was known for being honest, loyal, loved standing up for what was right, confronted pirates at 17, and he was an early, fierce critic of Dongzhu, urged his execution.
So the alliance initially looked strong and unstoppable. Yuan Shao is their nominal leader. Dongzhu responds by moving the capital to Chongqing, a strategic retreat, buying time.
But, and this is a recurring theme, the alliance was plagued by internal conflicts. Cao Cao famously urged them, "Strike now." While Dongzhu on the run, he called it a golden opportunity sent by the heavens to crush him decisively. But his advice, ignored.
That moment of indecision, it really shows how personal ambition and distrust just trumped strategic unity, even facing a common enemy.
Exactly, and that's where it starts to unravel. Han Fu, governor of Jizhu, gets jealous of Yuan Shao, cuts his grain supply, literally starts starving the alliance's potential.
And then Liu Bei kills Cao Mao over a personal grudge. Cao Mao, who was instrumental in forming the alliance, the unity was already cracking. Just like that.
Sun Jian, fierce fighter though he was, suffered a crushing defeat at Liangdong. Zhu Rong launched a sudden assault. Sun Jian barely escaped with his life. He even used his bright red headscarf as a decoy, gave it to his officer Zhu Mao to draw the enemy away. Shows his audacity, his survival instincts.
But he showed tactical cunning later too, didn't he? Having an officer spread that rumor about a night raid.
Yeah, Hu Zhen spread the rumor, caused panic among Dongzhu's troops. Sun Jian eventually advanced close to Liang, about 90 live, maybe 30 miles, a significant push. Forced Dongzhou to retreat again.
But ultimately, a tragic end for Sun Jian. Not by Dongzhu's hand, but Liu Biao's forces. Shot with arrows, killed in battle.
Right, the battle where Sun Jian crossed the river to strike at Liu Biao. His death left a leadership vacuum in the south, but his legacy, as we'll see, was incredibly influential.
So the alliance just completely fell apart. Former allies like Yuan Shao and Gongsun Zan, tuning their armies against each other instead of uniting. The accounts are vivid. Not one of them tried to restore order or help the emperor. Instead, all they cared about was carving up territory and dreaming of becoming emperors themselves. Just pure self-interest.
And with the alliance failing, Dongzhou, ironically, was taken down by a plot from within his own ranks. Now, the popular novel, Romance of the Three Kingdoms, features Diao Chan, the stunningly beautiful woman, orchestrating it all, creating tension between Dongzhou and his adopted son, Liu Bei.
But historically, the sources tell a slightly different story. Less romantic, maybe, but just as compelling. Wang Yun, the minister over the masses, skilled in both literature and martial arts, an all-rounder, he cultivated a relationship with Liu Bei. Wang Yun had a history of exposing corruption, too. He'd even accused the powerful eunuch Zhang before. So, a man of principle. Courage.
So when Liu Bei expressed his deep frustration, his fear about Dongzhou nearly killing him, Wang Yun seized that golden opportunity. He laid out his plan to eliminate Dongzhou, pleaded with Liu Bei to help from the inside, reminded him they'd always gotten along well, a calculated risk, paid off temporarily.
Liu Bei successfully killed Dongzhou. Huge moment, should have brought stability right. But the aftermath revealed this fatal misstep by Wang Yun. An error in judgment with disastrous consequences. He refused Liu Bei's suggestion to wipe out all of Dongzhuo's former troops.
Yeah, he said, "These men haven't committed any crimes. They must not be executed." Sounded magnanimous, maybe, on the surface. But Wang Yun seriously overthought things when it came to those Liangzhu soldiers. He refused to issue a pardon. Then worse, ordered Dongzhu's entire army disbanded. ignored advice that this would cause panic, lead to a counter-rebellion. He even refused to appoint a respected general like Huang Kusong to take command, left this capable armed force leaderless.
And the consequences were immediate and disastrous. Dongzhu's former generals, Li Ju and Guosi, who'd initially asked for forgiveness, felt betrayed by Wang Yun's unclear reaction, the lack of pardon, so they stormed into the court.
Recaptured the emperor, killed Wang Yun. Liu Bei had to flee in a hurry. His moment of glory turned instantly to exile. A powerful lesson in how an idealist's miscalculation can unleash even greater chaos.
So Dongzhu is dead, Wang Yun's dead, and the emperor is even more vulnerable than before, just a helpless pawn for Li Yi and Guosi.
Absolutely. This period really highlights the complete collapse of imperial authority, the son of heaven reduced to a bargaining chip.
In Emperor Xian's personal suffering, it was immense. A tragic symbol of what common people were going through, too. Kept on minimal food. The accounts describe the palace women having to gather wild vegetables and fruits just to have something to eat. Imagine the imperial court foraging like peasants.
And the civil war between Li Ju and Guosi just made things worse. There was that incident where Guoxi's wife tricked him into thinking Li Ju poisoned him, led to open war between them. During the fighting, arrows even hit the curtains of Emperor Xian's royal tent. Shows the desperation, the lawlessness, even at the very top.
Yeah, there's that heartbreaking story. The emperor requested 5 dew of rice, about 1.5 gallons, and 5 ox bones for his starving attendants, a basic plea.
And Li Shu's response, "Oh, scold, you're getting your meals every day. What more do you need rice for?" Then he sent a pile of rotting cow bone.
Unbelievable. The emperor forced to chew on the foul-smelling bones. It's one of the most poignant details. The ultimate degradation of imperial power.
His attempts to escape. Harrowing. At one point, getting onto a boat, soldiers tied him to one of their own using strips of silk and slowly lowered him down. The scene was pure chaos. Guards hacking at the hands of soldiers clinging to the sides. Fingers went flying, landing all over the emperor's boat. So many innocent people died just trying to cross with him. It was a daily fight for survival, even for the emperor.
Okay, so amidst all this escalating chaos, the emperor's suffering. This shrewd, ambitious figure, Cao Cao, sees his chance. He'd been a key player from early on, right?
Yeah.
Magistrate at 23, fought the Yellow Turbans, became Chancellor of Jinan Kingdom. Proven track record.
Exactly. While the other warlords were busy fighting each other, caught in revenge cycles, territorial squabbles, Cao Cao's brilliant strategist Sun Yu urged him, welcome the emperor. Sun Yu called it a huge opportunity, said it would align us with the will of heaven and win the hearts of the people. Not just tactical, a brilliant strategic masterstroke for legitimacy. By hosting the emperor, Cao Cao could issue edicts in the imperial name, gave him legal, moral authority his rivals lacked.
And Cao Cao didn't just go for legitimacy. He took practical steps, secured his base, adopted that Tunshin system, the state-run farming, a smart, practical move to solve the devastating food crisis caused by all the war, put abandoned land back into production, used labor from captured Yellow Turban rebels.
And it was incredibly successful. Yielded enough grain to feed 1 million households in its first year. This gave Cao Cao's forces reliable food supplies. A major strategic advantage when armies often collapse just because they ran out of food. Shows Cao Cao's pragmatic brilliance. Resources matter.
So with the emperor under his control, Cao Cao moves the imperial court to his base in Yushang. The accounts highlight, though, that while he treated Emperor Xin with a certain level of respect, like offering incense at an ancestral tablet.
Right, but he also guarded power like a hawk. It illustrates that delicate balance Cao Cao maintained, appear loyal to the Han while subtly consolidating all the real power for himself.
This period also sees the rise of the figures who are going to dominate the next era, right? Laying the groundwork for the Three Kingdoms.
Definitely. Sun Jian's legacy, for example, carried on by his sons, particularly Sun Si. Charismatic, audacious leader, Yuan Shu famously called him like Sun Lang, the little conqueror.
Sun Si, raised by his astute mother Lady Wu, quickly connected with local scholars like the brilliant strategist Zhu Yu. That was a key relationship. He inherited his father's troops from Yuan Shu, and, unlike others just holding territory, he started aggressive conquests, quickly expanded his influence down south.
And he eventually broke ties with Yuan Shu, especially after Yuan Shu foolishly declared himself emperor, which alienated a lot of people. Cao Cao, seeing Sun Si's power growing, saw him as a potential ally against Yuan Shu and others, granted him important titles: cavalry commandant, Marquis of Wucheng, then the more prestigious general who shines for Han, a clear sign of Sun Si's rising stature.
But Sun Si, he was an active, bold leader, a general on the battlefield. But that aggressive nature, leading charges himself, it led to his early death.
Yeah, fatally wounded by arrows from former retainers of Gang, an enemy he'd made. On his deathbed, though, that poignant moment of foresight, he entrusted his brother Sun Quan with the responsibility, famously said, "I may be the one who conquered this land, but you're the one who can keep it."
Meanwhile, Liu Bei, often romanticized later but the sources say not too into books, used to sell straw sandals for a living. Humble origins.
Yet he cultivated that close bond with Gongsun Zan, his fellow student under the famous scholar Lu Ji, showed his ability to inspire loyalty. Liu Bei's strength wasn't military genius or noble birth. It was his personal charisma, his reputation for, well, righteousness, or at least projecting it.
He took over Zhou province but then quickly lost it to Liu Bu, the same Liu Bu he'd offered shelter to.
Classic case of misplaced trust. Many called Liu Bu a traitor, said it was the classic case of a cuckoo laying eggs in another bird's nest. Shows how fragile alliances were.
And Liu Bu himself, often celebrated in fiction as this ultimate warrior.
Historically, lost more often than he won. Despite his immense personal fighting skill, that famous act of shooting a halberd through a gate to stop a fight between Liu Bei and Yuan Shu's General Jiling, it's notable, even if we debate its accuracy, speaks to his unpredictable nature, maybe an occasional flash of brilliance amidst the recklessness.
Cao Cao, meanwhile, still facing challenges everywhere. Battle for one city, his general Dian Wei, that fearsome warrior of huge strength.
Fought valiantly, yeah. Each man taking on 10 enemies at once allowed Cao Cao to retreat safely, a crucial sacrifice.
But Cao Cao later faced Liu Bu again, nearly got killed. Only escaped because he wasn't dressed like a high-ranking general. A testament to Liu Bu's danger in Cao Cao's narrow escapes.
And Yuan Shao, remember him? Leader of the anti-Dongzhou alliance initially. He got locked in this bitter struggle with Gongsun Zan, fragmenting the north even more. At the Battle of Jikao, Yuan Shao's general Kuai Yi used his vanguard of 800 elite soldiers, 1,000 crossbows on each flank, decisively defeated Gongsun Zan's 30,000 troops, including the famed White Horse Volunteers. Shows the importance of tactics, discipline over sheer numbers.
Gongsun Zan, despite early victories being a key defender of the frontier, he became arrogant and brutal in Yuzhou after defeating Liu Yu. Sources say he never showing any care for the people. His cruelty led to resentment, defections, and eventually Yuan Shao defeated him. A reminder, even powerful warlords fall if they alienate everyone.
And you had other figures, too. Kong Rong, known for his wit, eccentricity, struggled in leadership. Mi Heng, talented but incredibly arrogant scholar, met a tragic end for his insults. Their stories highlight that in this brutal era, reputation, talent alone, not enough. You needed political skill, military strength, the ability to inspire loyalty, or at least command fear.
So, after going through all that, what does it all mean for us, looking back? This deep dive shows this world where ambition, loyalty, betrayal, they just constantly shifted the ground under everyone's feet. A blueprint for political upheaval, really.
Yeah, and if we connect it to the bigger picture, you see how that power vacuum, the total failure of existing institutions, and just the raw opportunism of individuals led to unprecedented chaos, suffering. The common people suffered most. Massacres, starvation, endless war. The emperor's own miserable journey kind of exemplifies it all. When central authority collapses, society often follows.
It's a really stark reminder, isn't it? Even in huge upheavals, there are these underlying patterns. The struggle for resources, the desperate need for legitimacy, that constant dangerous dance between cooperation and just brutal conflict. This isn't just history. It's a profound study in human nature under extreme pressure.
Which raises that important question. In a world where even those claiming to be righteous warriors were often just, as the source says, dreaming of becoming emperors themselves, what does real leadership even look like when an empire is crumbling? How do you tell the difference between ambition and genuine statesmanship?
And what stands out to you listening to all this? Is it the sheer brutality, the unexpected twists of fate, or maybe the incredible resilience of those who somehow navigated such treacherous times, shaping the destiny of a continent?
We really hope this deep dive has offered you a fresh perspective, maybe an aha moment or two, about this absolutely fascinating, pivotal era in Chinese history, illuminating that complex interplay of forces that brought down one of the world's most enduring empires.
Thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive. Until next time, keep that curiosity alive.